Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Before we get started, I want to cover just a few housekeeping items. This webinar is produced by the Child Parent Institute, Greater Bay Area Child Abuse Prevention Council Coalition, and the Child Abuse Training and Technical Assistance Center, a project of the Center for Innovation and Resources. For those who can hear me right now, this might seem obvious, but I just want to remind everyone to turn on their speakers in order to hear the presentation. You can use the Q&A feature to ask the presenter any questions that you may have. We will leave time at the end of the presentation for Charlie to answer those questions. The chat panel is where you can ask tech support questions. We will answer those immediately in this panel. And after today's webinar, you will receive a link to access Charlie's handout and PowerPoint presentation from today's session. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker. Charlie Appelstein, M.S.W, is a youth care specialist and president of Appelstein Training Resources, LLC. He provides expert strength-based training, consultation, publications, CDs, and DVDs for individuals and groups who work with children and youth experiencing emotional and behavioral challenges. Described as the best youth care trainer in America by Robert Lieberman, former president of the American Association of Children's Residential Centers, Charlie has devoted his entire adult career to helping children and youth struggling with emotional and behavioral challenges and those who guide them. An engaging, informative, and humorous speaker, Charlie is the author of 3 critically acclaimed books, including No Such Thing as a Bad Kid, Understanding and Responding to Kids with Emotional and Behavioral Challenges Using a Positive Strength-Based Approach. Charlie's strength-based approach delivers a message of hope and possibility to our most vulnerable youth and those who shape and influence their lives. And this is Charlie's first time presenting a webinar, and I'm confident he's going to do great. So please bear with me a moment while I switch the controls over to Charlie.
How's everybody doing? Can you hear me all right? So I'm Charlie Appelstein, and before we get going, I have to tell you right away, I'm kind of guilty about this book, No Such Thing as a Bad Kid, because I wrote it before I became a parent. My next book is There's Only One Bad Kid. Mine. Only kidding, she's a great kid. Although she told me a couple of years ago, Dad, you don't know how to talk to normal kids, maybe the troubled ones. I says, Julie, we'll be having a lot of talks over the next few years. And we did. We had a big one last year when I accidentally erased Grey's Anatomy from the Comcast page. I didn't know she was watching it remotely from Washington, D.C., where she goes to college. Oh, did we have a big one. Well, we learned you can actually restore a deleted show. How do you like that? So it is a great pleasure to be here. This is my first webinar. I hope you can hear me. I hope you can see me. I wish I could see you. So I had a wonderful presentation created for today based on managing your behavior first, which is so critical. And then around noon yesterday, I got an email from Robin at California Parent Institute with all your questions. And they were great questions. But what I had to do at that point then was change my presentation because I needed to add a lot more information based on what you desire. And I was happy to do that. I'm a parent and I know it's tough what we're going through. A lot of the questions that you asked had to do with behavior problems, kids being rude, kids refusing, kids not doing this, kids doing that. And I know that's really hard to deal with, but I need to talk to you about that, about kids who act out. I've been saying something for a lot of years, and I believe it. No kid likes acting out. I think it's actually the biggest crock in the world that kids like acting out. I've had elementary school teachers say, oh, the kid likes being sent to the office. He gets to avoid the work. I've had other people say, oh, he likes being rude, likes defying, likes being defiant and stuff like that. No, they don't. No, they don't. No kid likes acting out. If you could put truth serum into any kid who's acting out on a kind of chronic basis and say, who would you rather be? You, the kid who's acting out a lot, or that kid over there who's really happy, really connected, got a great future ahead of him? Who would you rather be right now? No kid would pick themselves. Behavior is always a message. A neon light flashing over a kid's head saying, help me out here, figure out what's going on. So even though I'm supposed to be a behavior guy, you know, I don't see that. I'm really more of a preventing behavior guy. When I hear about a kid acting out, I want to see, sure, I could come up with consequences and limit setting, and I'll give you some of those. But my big thing is, why is a good kid? Because I believe there's no such thing as a bad kid. Why is that kid acting out? What's going on? You know, years ago, I was working with a kid in an elementary school as a behavior consultant. He was from Honduras, and it was his first year in the States. And he was driving his fourth grade teacher nuts. Rude, defiant. She used every adjective in the book to describe this kid. And at one point, she says, "I can't take it anymore." You know, and I really, and I started seeing him probably in November, so she was fed up by the time I got there. And so I learned his history, and, you know, and early on, she said to me, "I can't take it anymore. He's driving me crazy." And I said to her, "Judy, I can come up with limit setting. I can come up with a lot of strategies, so forth. But I'll tell you what's going on here. It's pretty obvious. This kid misses his father. The way it worked with this kid is every September, and that was the first year, his mother took him to the States, and they lived there for 10 years while she worked, and then they would go home in the summer. The kid missed his father terribly. He loved his father. And his anger and his acting out and his defiance, his rudeness, it was so clear. That was his way of sending a message to the world that I'm angry, I'm sad, I miss my dad. You didn't need to be Freud to figure that out. So I said to Judy that day, I says, "Judy, I can come up with strategies, I come up with techniques, but I think you really need to sit down with him and tell him that you understand, that he's a good son, that he misses his dad, that it must be very painful. And that maybe perhaps some of the behavior that he's showing in school has something to do with that. Talk to him. I think it could help." She says, "Okay, fine, I'll do it." She was pretty much at her wit's end. Late that night, I'll never forget it. I got an email from her. She says, "Charlie, Judy here. I did what you said. After school, I met with Andre, and I started out by telling him that I can understand why maybe he's having a hard time in my class this year, that he misses his dad, he's a good son, and that maybe his behavior, his problems is his way of telling me, help me out here, you know, talk to me about this, you know." And then while I was talking to him, I said, "You know, Andre, I can kind of understand what you're going through, missing a parent. When I was 14, my mother died. And as soon as I said that, I started crying. Then he started crying, and we gave each other a hug. Andre never misbehaved again. It was almost miraculous. That was the source of his problem. I know a young teenager, you know, a few years ago, in her sophomore year of high school, she was acting out, giving her parents a horrible time. Again, rude, defiant, kind of obnoxious. You know, was doing a lot of distancing behaviors. She was driving them nuts, and they tried a lot of different strategies. What happened? Near the end of the year, the kid came out, let the parents know she was gay, let her friends in the world know she was gay. Her parents embraced her, loved her, supported her. And her behavior, you know, she wasn't the same kid anymore. She was a lot better. Many years ago, I was in elementary school. It was a fourth grader driving everybody nuts, and he'd been driving everybody nuts for 4 years. Disruptive, acting out, belligerent, rude. At home, he was doing the same thing with his parents. They tried every trick in the book, all these consequences and behavior plans and all this kind of stuff. During that year, his third year in the school, they found out that he could only hear every other word. Can you imagine how guilty everyone was at that point? All the anger and the put downs of this kid and the limits and this and that. The poor kid could only hear every other word. Can you imagine how frustrating life is? So what I'm trying to get across here today is I will certainly talk to you during this session. And in my handout and my PowerPoints, there's lots of great information about limit setting, stuff like that. But me, where I come from is I believe every kid is a great kid. I believe every kid has great potential. And if they're acting out, there's a message there. Help me out here, figure this out, you know? And the strategies I'll give you today and the approach I'll give you will help you with that. And the third thing I want to mention today, before we get into the presentation, is I have to tell you, I'm still shocked that I'm doing parent trainings. I never thought in a million years I would do something like this today. After college, I worked for 16 years in residential treatment centers with kids who were severely abused, angry, acting out, And their behavior was so bad that they had to live in what we call these residential treatment centers. And so I learned how to deal with these kids, and we came up with approaches and strategies that really seemed to work. And then after 16 years in the business, I quit cold turkey as the program director of a big residential center and started to do these workshops. I thought at that time I would only train people who were working with really hurt and troubled kids, often who had suffered trauma in residential centers, foster care, psychiatric hospitals, juvenile detention centers. Thought that would be my thing. But right away, I started getting calls to do parent trainings, some nice suburb. And I'm thinking, how can I do that? What do I know about parenting? I wasn't a parent at the time. I said, well, my tools, my skills are designed to help people working with severely troubled kids, not healthy, higher functioning kids. But I needed the money, so I took the job. They went really well. And now 25 years later, I do tons of parent trainings, lots of sessions for the typical parent out there. And early on, it was so curious to me because I could do a day-long training at a residential center for people working with severely traumatized acting out kids. Then at night, I'd go to some nice suburb and do a parent training. And I'd pretty much give the parents the same tools and techniques that I gave the residential people. And I'm thinking, how does that work? How can I be giving the parents the same tools that I'm giving the residential people? But they both seem to like it. I get great feedback. I've been invited back. How does that work? How does that work? And then I figured it out. What I figured out, and you can tell me if I'm not right about this, what I figured out is the healthier a kid is, the more you can screw up with them. The more trouble they are, the more you got to do it right. If you've raised your kids in a pretty good way, and they're wired nicely, and they have a nice sense of self, you can yell at them, punish them, be unpredictable, use sarcasm. You could do a lot of things I wouldn't suggest, and they'll be fine. Like, Mom or Dad's having a bad day. You know, this pandemic's getting to all of us, you know, and life goes on. Conversely, if you took in a foster kid before this virus, and you got some foster kids in your house, kids who don't trust adults, who have negligible sense of self, who are very vulnerable, sensitive kids, if you yell at them, if you punish them, if you don't treat them right, they go ballistic and trash your house. Same exact responses, two incredibly different reactions. Why? The healthier you are, the more you will tolerate people not doing it right. The more trouble you are, the more you demand they do it right. So what I figured out working in the 70s was severely traumatized, and 80s was severely traumatized kids, kids who had no trust, who were great kids, but just did not believe in themselves, believe in anybody else. They forced us to treat them great. You yelled at them, they blew. They did that. You weren't predictable, they blew. You didn't have the right response, they blew. Because that's what they really needed. And then what I figured out years later is that the higher functioning kids want the same thing. They want to be treated great. They want to be treated with respect. They want the same verb interventions, the same structure that the traumatized kids want. And, so frankly, I really believe that if you treated every kid as a trouble kid, they all be healthier. Based on that dynamic, the healthier a kid is, the more you screw up. My wife and I, we've treated my 20-year-old daughter from the day she was born until now as if she's the most troubled adolescent to ever work with. Sometimes I think she's heading there, but there's nothing we've done with her that I wouldn't do with a severely traumatized 16-year-old kid in a residential center. From the day when she was born, we've had routines and structure and predictability in our house. Now, what are all the experts telling parents like you during this time of incredible stress? It is incredibly important to have routines, predictability, structure, when kids do their homework, when they do the schoolwork, when you have meals. You should empower the kids, have family meetings, and go over what's the day's schedule, who's doing what, who's doing that, who has chores. Think about it. In this really stressful time where we have no predictability about tomorrow, next week, what's going to happen with this virus, when things are going to open up, we have no predictability. So what kids need is extreme predictability. To compensate for that by having predictability in your house, that will reduce anxiety, that will get kids feeling better, empower them to come up with the routines and the structure. So for my daughter, we always had routines and predictability. With my daughter, we always tried to say please and thank you to her every single time we made a request. That's my number one feedback in 42 years in the business. I can do a 10-hour training somewhere. The number one thing I hear over and over again is, you were right, Charlie. Ever since we started saying please and thank you to the kids, every time we make a serious request of them, the whole mood of my house has changed. My program has changed. Why is please and thank you my number one feedback? It's not the social etiquette. Sure, we should model that. It's because everything we say and do in this world has two components, a content and a message. I can say to one of you out there, hey, Emma, you look great today. Or I can say, hey, Emma, you look great today. You do look great today, Emma. Content was exactly the same. The message was different. Listen to this. Hey, John, can you please start your routine? Thanks, pal. John, start your routine. Move your stuff to the other table. Hey, can you please move your stuff to the other table? Hey, can you please come see me in the hallway? I need to talk to you. See me in the hallway now. You see the difference there? You can change your interactions with your kids remarkably, dramatically, just by using some of these techniques. And again, we'll visit some of these later in the presentation. But just a simple little thing like please and thank you. Look how many times you make requests every day. What else do we do with my daughter? We've always used consequences instead of punishment. I don't think kids should ever be punished. I think consequences make a lot of sense. What's the difference between a consequence and a punishment? Consequence is related to what the kid did. A punishment isn't. Consequences reinforce values. If you have a value in your house that says, we talk to kids with respect, we are respectful to one another, and then a parent comes home and another parent and the partner says, hey, you can't believe the way the kid was talking to me today, he's so rude. And then that parent addresses the kid, hey, you don't talk to your mother that way. How many times have I told you that's not the kind of language? Go to your room. What are you doing? You're reinforcing the value of being respectful by being, it goes in one ear out the next. Consequences reinforce values. Again, later in the presentation, I'll go over some logical consequences that are all related to what they did. Punishment is all about inflicting pain, taking kids away. It's an aversive kind of way of dealing with kids. Now, here's something that kind of relates to what we talked earlier. If your kid is a pretty high-functioning kid, you can punish them and it might work. If you threaten to take their phone away, take something away or something like that, it may work, but you're still planting seeds of anger because it's a power move. If you were pulled over for speeding, if you could even drive again, if you were pulled over for speeding and the cop came up to you and says, okay, sir, what's your favorite TV show? What? What's your favorite TV show? Law and Order. You're a butt kisser. Law and Order. Well, you can't watch it for a year because you were speeding. What? Give me the freaking ticket. That's 2 years for your attitude, bud. You'd go ballistic if they took your favorite show away because you were speeding it. You go home, your kid's acting out, give me the Game Boy, give me the phone. What does that have to do with anything? It's a power move, and it distances you from your kids. A great writer once said, a parent should never say or do anything to their kids that distances. Parenting, we're going to talk about this a lot today, is all about that relationship you have with it. When you punish, you distance. Now, if you need to punish because that's the only way you control your kids, go for it. I'm trying to give you kind of like what the standard is, what we should be shooting for. There isn't a behavior you can't come up with that we can come up with a logical consequence that's related to what the kid did, that reinforces values. Again, we'll get to this later in the webinar. So again, we want to use consequences instead of punishment, which again brings us together. Gordon wrote a millions bestseller in the 70s called Parent Effectiveness Training. He said a parent, should never, that's right. No, sorry. That was the same thing I just said. What Gordon said is, you want to know why a lot of teenagers act out, and a lot of you, sent me questions about teenagers who are acting out. Now, some of that is developmentally appropriate, but Gordon said something interesting. He says, you want to know why a lot of teenagers act out? Sometimes it's payback for the power that was misused against them when they're younger. I think he makes a lot of sense. When kids are young, you can yell at them, you can spank them, which I don't think you should ever spank a kid. And if you spank your kid and you're a loving person, okay. And by the way, what I'm talking about today, it's not about good versus bad. If you're not doing some of the stuff I'm talking about today, you're still a good parent. I'm just trying to make you even better. If you sit here listening to this webinar thinking, oh my God, I don't do this, I'm a terrible parent, I screwed up my kid. No, that's bad thinking. That's bad thinking. If you love your kid, that's like 95% of your parenting. You can yell, you can spank, you can punish, but if you love that kid and you're a decent person, that kid will probably grow up fine. The stuff I'm giving you today is to try to take a good parent, make even better. And I think this stuff really works. And it is backed up by some of the greatest research, which I'm going to share with you. So my daughter, we use consequences instead of punishment. My daughter, we use a lot of humor. I heard a nun was doing a keynote once. She says they did a study at Stanford. Kids learn 700% more in a classroom when humor is an active part of the teaching. If you're not that funny with your kids, try to be funnier. Makes them feel good. Literally opens up the brain. The key thing with humor is don't use sarcasm. One great expert said, sarcasm is veiled hostility. Another great expert said, when you use sarcasm with kids, it makes them afraid of you. Next time you want to use sarcasm with your kids, particularly your teenagers, because again, this is all interrelated what we're talking about today. You have an issue with your kid about defiance, about school refusal, about this, about that. You got to think about all the stuff I'm talking about today, the please and thank you, the routines, the way you talk to your kids, the way you discipline them. It's all interrelated. My hope, and I've seen this over the years, is that you can help your kids to do so much better. Help them mitigate some of those behaviors that you're having, not by coming up with a limit or a reward or a threat. It's by doing the stuff we're talking about right now, stuff we'll be talking about through this webinar. So with my daughter, there's nothing we done with her I wouldn't do with kids in a residential center. You know, those kids are traumatized kids. Your kids right now, and they needed that kind of treatment. Your kids, we're all kind of traumatized right now because of this pandemic, because of this virus. So the timing, I believe, has never been greater for parents, teachers to use the strategies, to use the techniques I'm talking about now. And they are backed up by some of those cutting-edge research in neuroscience, which takes me to the beginning of this presentation. Now, this presentation today, it's a little different than was advertised. Basically, it's two parts. I'm going to start out by talking about an approach to dealing with kids, which I've already been talking about. It's called a strength-based approach, which is the way we deal with kids, which is evidence-based, and it's really a way that really makes you and the kids do so wonderful. I'm going to talk about that approach. And then halfway through the webinar, I'll get into what the intent of this training really was, which is to help you manage your behavior first. You are the most important person in any interaction you have with your kids. If you don't do well, then, and we don't always do well, especially under tense times. So I'll give some very specific strategies to help you manage yourself. But we're going to start by looking at this approach that we use with kids in the residential center, that I use with my daughter, which is really transforming, revolutionizing the way we deal with kids. And it's called using a positive strength-based approach. Okay, I'm flicking on my presentation now. Let's see if I can do this right. I need to go to the slideshow. Okay, so I titled today's presentation, even though I've changed it up to include more information to help you, Parenting Under Pressure, Core Strength-Based Strategies for Responding Instead of Reacting to Your Kids During Times of Stress. So everything I've been talking about thus far, it actually has a name. All of the strategies, the techniques that I gave to the teachers that I'm giving you right now, the limit setting, the please and thank you, it's called using a positive strength-based approach. As I mentioned a few seconds ago, it has revolutionized the way we deal with kids. So the first half of this training will be about using that approach, what it's all about, and some of the strategies that help you better connect with your kids. So what is it? Here's a simple definition of strength-based practice that I've cobbled together over the years. Strength-based practice is an emerging approach to raising kids that is exceptionally positive and inspiring. It's focused on strength building rather than flaw fixing, what your children do right versus what they do wrong. It begins with the belief that all young people have or can develop strengths and use past successes to curb problem behavior and enhance functioning. Now, let me say one more thing as we move on into this presentation. Every slide, every word you read I'll be sending to you later. So you don't have to worry about notes, don't have to worry about me going too fast. Because I only have an hour and 15 minutes. Certain slides I might just reference and say, read this thoroughly when you get this later. So that's a simple definition. And I want to show you the research that backs it up. Why being positive with kids and using the approaches I've already outlined are so wonderful. And here's that research, and I'm going to read it to you. And I'm not going to do a lot of reading to you, but I want to show you why this stuff really works. Where's the science that backs it up? Let's take a quick sip. So again, the approach I'm talking about is very positive and inspiring. Positive emotions flood our brains. So here's the research that backs up why the approach works. Positive emotions flood our brains with dopamine and serotonin, chemicals that don't make us feel good, but dial up the learning centers of our brains to higher levels. Positive emotions help humans to organize new information, keep that information in the brain longer, and retrieve it faster later on. And they enable us to make and sustain more neural connections, which allows us to think more quickly and creatively, become more skilled at complex analysis and problem solving, and see and invent new ways of doing things. Is that not what you want your kids doing? Brain change, once thought impossible, is now a well-known fact. One that is supported by some of the most rigorous and cutting-edge research in neuroscience. Bingo. Everything I'm giving you today is based on science. Literally, your kids will use more of their brain. They will be more productive in an environment that's positive using the strategies that I'll be outlining today. So I gave you the definition, I gave you some science, but to me, strength-based practice, strength-based parenting is really about two words. Attitude and actions. It starts with the attitude you convey to every kid in your house from the second they're born and then forever that says, I believe in you. I think you're one amazing kid. You're going to make it with me. You're going to make it in life. And I'm absolutely thrilled to be part of your journey. Now let's get going. And everything you do with your kids from the second they're born and forever needs to be an extension of that attitude. It says, boy, I love you. I can't wait to see you every day. You're going to make it with me. You're going to make it in life. Make it in life. Let's go. And why do you think that's so important? Because to me, that is the most important thing you can do is have this attitude that says, I believe. And why is that so important? Well, let's look at some reasons. One, it makes them feel good. When you are positive with your kids, the please and thank you, the consequences, when you're smiling and doing all the stuff that I'm mentioning today, you get them feeling good. And when they feel good, as I just showed you, chemicals get released in the brain. They start using more of their brain than they would use if they were in a more punitive house where there's punishment, yelling, put downs. The environment you create in your house, the techniques you use, your positivity, literally has a neurological effect on your kids. And when you get kids feeling good based on how you're talking to them and dealing with them, what's happening? You're building great relationships. And I'm almost all the research now on parenting, on school discipline, on discipline in detentions anywhere. It's saying the same things. If you want kids to behave better, you want these kids to be all that they can be, build great relationships. And you do that by using this positive strength-based approach. I heard James Garbarino speak a few years ago. Garbarino is one of the world's foremost experts on kids and violence. He's written 30 books. He got in front of a group of 1,000 people in Las Vegas. He says, we can now predict with almost 100% certainty whether a tough teenager with a history of aggression will commit another act of aggression when he or she enters the high school in the fall. If we can look into this kid's life at any moment while they're at the school and see this one factor present, we don't worry about the kid. What do you think that is? Well, I'll tell you, if that kid knows there's at least one adult at the school who thinks I'm terrific, the odds of that kid doing something serious go down about zero. Zero. Every kid in your house needs to wake up every day thinking, my mom, my dad thinks I'm terrific. That doesn't mean you can't screw up with them. That does. We're all human, but they need to know that you're terrific. And it's that relationship you cultivate your kids by using the strategies we're talking about and the ones you already have. They'll build these relationships, and that's what this business is all about. When I go back to talk to you about Glasser, Richard Glasser, he wrote a great book, might not be Richard, but Glasser wrote this great book called Choice Theory years ago. And I want to tell you about an anecdote because it really speaks to what a lot of your questions are about and what I'm about. So Glasser's doing therapy, and a woman comes in, and she looks very distraught. And she says, Dr. Glasser, you got to help me. You got to help me. I have a 16-year-old daughter. She's driving me crazy. She's lazy. She's rude. She's defiant. And she won't do anything around the house. She cooks a lot and leaves pans and messes for me to clean up all the time. I'm like a personal slave, but we have big fights, and the tension is palpable. It's awful. She starts crying. She says, you got to help me. You got to help me. So Glasser says, I will. He says, okay, I want you to do something for me. She said, I'll do anything. I want you to go home. And he says, and did she make a big mess this morning at breakfast? She said, oh yeah, pots and pans everywhere. Still from last night too. So I want you to clean everything up. Clean everything up. Make the house look nice. And then when she comes home from school today, I just want you to greet her with a smile and ask her how her day was. Lady gets mad. She says, what? You want me to clean up everything? You want her to win? You want her to get away with it? He says, no, I just want you to go home and clean up everything and greet her with a smile. So you want her to win, huh? You want her to win. He says, no, I just want you to clean up everything. I want you to do that every day. Every day. She makes a mess, clean up every day, but just smile when she comes back from school. Try and talk with her. She says, fine. She kind of storms out. A week later, she comes in and she looks great. She's smiling, got a little makeup on, nice little flowered dress. Says, Dr. Glass, you wouldn't believe what happened. You wouldn't believe what happened. Oh my God. He says, tell me. Says, so I went home that first day and I did what you said. I cleaned up the kitchen, made it look nice, even though it killed me. I waited for her to come out of school. She came in and she could see into the kitchen. She saw it was neat as could be. And she saw me smiling. And she was a little taken aback. And I said, how was school, dear? She says, okay. He says, can you tell me a little bit about it? She actually told me a little bit about it. Next morning, next day, and then that night, we had actually a pretty nice meal. Again, she left all the pots and pans, and I cleaned up everything. Next day, she made a big mess at breakfast. I cleaned up everything. She comes back from school, and we had another really great talk. And she started to really open up to me about stuff she hadn't opened up in years. 2, 3, 4 days go by, and every day is getting better. She's still not picking up, lifting a finger to help me. I'm cleaning up everything, but she's talking to me. We're relating. On the 4th day, at dinner time, we were having a nice talk, and all of a sudden, in the middle of the dinner, she had like a fit. She says, that's it. That's it. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore. And she gets up, and she goes to the kitchen. She starts cleaning up stuff, putting dishes away, scraping down stuff. And then she looks at me and says, are you happy now? Are you happy? He says, yeah, you know. From that moment on, they were 50-50, and they were a loving mother and daughter. What did Glasser figure out? He figured out that the problem wasn't defiance, it wasn't rudeness, it wasn't that she wasn't doing her share, it was damage to the relationship. They weren't getting along, they weren't connecting, too much tension had built. And so what Glasser suggested to her was to restore the relationship by not worrying about the behavior. And that might be my advice to you with some of your kids. And every kid is different, so there's no always, but sometimes when you have a kid, especially during times of great stress, who's acting out, who's being defined as this, maybe it's time to just be nice to the kid. Let him get away with a few things, as long as it's not a safety thing. Get back to that loving relationship you had. Spend some time. Do what Glasser should have that woman do. And I tell you, I suggest that many times, and many times it's worked, because it's all about relationship. It really is all about relationship. Now, why else is it so important to believe in every kid unconditionally? Because I'll tell you, when you believe in every, well, let me ask you a question. Let me tell you. So one of the other reasons, another critical reason is to believe in every kid is that when you believe in every kid, you know they're all human and that throughout your kid's entire life, they are going to struggle with self-doubt. Is it not true that at almost every age a kid is at, they struggle with self-doubt? Yeah, we struggle with self-doubt. Well, Degas, the great artist, said self-doubt kills ability. Oftentimes, we have wonderful kids who are really questioning themselves. They have self-doubt, and it stops them from moving forward. So as strength-based parents, we know this is typical. This happens. Our kids struggle with self-doubt. So what does a strength-based parent do? You come up with strategies that attack that self-doubt. Every kid I work with, I know struggles with self, so we come up with strategy to attack that. And self-doubt often leads to anger, anxiety, and defiance. Behavior is always a message. Help me, help me. So if we know our kids are perhaps struggling with self-doubt, which almost they always do, especially during times like this, what do we do to attack self-doubt? A few things. One, get excited about little changes. This is one of the great strategies in the strength-based world. In the strength-based world, we say little changes can ripple into big solutions. So if you have a kid who's being defiant, who's being rude, who's really struggling, okay, take a step back, take some breaths, and instead of demanding he has to do everything for you, see if he could do just a little. See if he could do just a little, and they get really excited about that. Like I said, little changes can always ripple into dramatic solutions, and they get really excited about that. We help kids get back on track gradually. Here's a nice verbal intervention that I love to use with kids when you're kind of at loggerheads. It's called a connecting statement. Anytime you feel tension with the kids, you got to say to yourself, we got to connect, we got to connect. And this is how a conversation might go. Hey, this isn't me against you, we're on the same side. I don't like hassling you to do your schoolwork. What would you do if you were me? I love you, I believe in you, and I know that you're going to do great things in this world. But school is your ticket to a great life. How about we lighten the load? Just get 1 or 2 sections done. There's a lot going on, and I'll help you. I can't tell you how many kids, my own daughter, we get them out of that rut. We change the behavior by looking for just little changes, and then praise them on that. Hey, I like the way you tried a little harder today. This is a rough time. You took some really nice steps today, man. That's great. And then really get excited about it. And I can't tell you how many times once you get the kid through that barrier, because it's almost like this barrier when a kid is defiant and they got their heels in. If you could get them to move that little step, that one thing, that often opens up. Because remember, no kid likes acting out. They don't like being defiant. They do not. They're just stuck. They need you to connect with them. And these are ways that we do that. All the stuff I'm giving is ways that we do that. What else can you do with a kid who's struggling with self-doubt? Maybe won't move, won't do anything. Maybe use an incentive now and then. Experts hate using incentives with kids. If you have a PhD, you put down using rewards with kids. You know, what do all the experts say? Kids should behave well intrinsically. They shouldn't do well to get something. In fact, in my book, No Such Thing as a Bad Kid, which is a revised edition, you know, I cite this guy named Pink who wrote a best-selling book called Drive, and he really puts down using incentives with kids for the reasons I just mentioned. Pink's early in his book, he says, which I quote in my book, he says, incentives are like coffee. They produce a short-term boost, but then they wear off. What good are they? That's all I'm looking for. I don't use incentives that much with kids. I didn't use them much. But every now and then, especially under times of stress, when kids may be shut down, when they're really going through rough times, maybe an incentive will get them to move those little baby steps. And that's what we're looking for. Take those little baby steps, get them happy, and then often some of the rules open up. Now, there's some creative ways I've used incentives over the years. And again, I don't use them all the time. I just think it's a good tool for your toolbox. Because really what I'm trying to give you today are a lot of tools. My handout that you can get, this PowerPoint, and I'll probably get to half of it, has lots of tools. No one like me can say, if a kid's doing this, do this. I want you to have lots of tools and have the foundation of being a strength-based person, and that's what helps kids. This Billy Dollars, I've had a lot of success with that. Every now and then you can take a kid's picture, cut it into an oval, tape it to a dollar bill. So the kid's name is Billy, get Billy Dollars. So say you got a kid, maybe he's not doing his homework or something. Maybe you negotiate with the kid. He does 30 minutes of homework, he gets $2 billion. And then you can trade that in for something cool, like a currency. So you could put your face on a bill. So every now and then I've had people say to me, the kid wouldn't move at all, wouldn't do a thing until I put their face on a dollar bill. What else? Tickets. I tell kids all the time, learning is your ticket to a good life. I'm not fighting you to do your homework. I'm not pushing you to do your schoolwork. You know, for any other reason, then I want you to have a great life. And when you go for a job 10 years from now, 5 years from now, they're not going to give you a job as you good looking person with a nice sense of humor. You got to show them your ticket. And that's your education. Learning is your ticket to a great life. So every now and then, often with older kids, if they do a certain amount of work, they get some tickets, like a raffle ticket. And they can trade them in, or you could put them in a jar and pick one out. So again, I'm not saying that you use incentives with all these kids, but I want to put it into your toolbox. And by the way, I don't even like the word reward. I like to say celebrate. You get 10 tickets and we'll celebrate. You know, because I think rewards are for catching crooks and stuff like that. Me with incentives, get some, hey, get a bunch of dollars and we'll celebrate. We'll pick something good. So something like that. And the other thing we do to attack self-doubt, because again, a lot of kids struggle because of self-doubt. And as strength-based parents, we know great kids struggle with self-doubt, particularly during tough times. So what else we do? I mentioned that we get excited about little changes, maybe use an incentive. What we also want to do is normalize mistakes. Kids make mistakes, especially when everybody's cooped up, you make mistakes. And it's really critical, and this is becoming very prevalent in parenting circles now, is to really help kids understand that it's okay to screw up, to make mistakes. It's okay for you to do that. You know, I'm working with a kid or I'm in front of a group of kids and I go, what's a mistake? And they all have to yell out, an opportunity to take. Okay, I want you to yell this at home. There's like 400 or 500. I want to hear it from here. What's a mistake? Now you yell out, an opportunity to take. You know, if you're working out of the house, if you even have a job, you know, you come home, hey guys, I made a mistake today at work. Hey, was I excited or what? What's a mistake? An opportunity to take. You know, so many kids, you know, we talk about anxiety. They have so much anxiety because of the pressure they're putting on. I got to get everything right. What do the experts say about anxiety? Anxiety comes from faulty thinking, that they have, you know, the wrong kind of thoughts in their head, the wrong kind of expectations. You got kids suffering with anxiety issues. All the stuff I'm giving you will help reduce that, but also you want to help them change the thinking. You know, get them to take breaths and stuff and think, okay, what's making you so nervous here? What are you thinking? Now, what's a different way to think about that? You know, and so you want to normalize mistakes with kids. Say, we all make mistakes and stuff like that, and really focus on effort. Focus on effort. This is what we're talking about, a growth versus a fixed mindset here. I'll get to that in a few seconds. I get in front of kids all the time now. And I said, if I'm an eagle on the ground and I do this, do I get very high? No, but what if I do this? I get really high. The harder I try, the higher I fly. The harder I try, I said that like a Boston guy. The harder I try. The harder I try, the higher I fly. Be the eagle. Come on, everybody together. The harder I try, the higher I fly. Be the eagle. Be the eagle. Now, if you're an eagle and you try really hard, you're going to get high. You're going to build a nest in any tree. So that you will be successful. Will you make mistakes? Of course. And what's a mistake? An opportunity to take. I had a mother email me, says the kid had a lot of trouble practicing her piano. And they yelled at her. They put pressure on her. They paid all this money for music lessons. The mother put this picture on the piano. The harder I try, the higher I fly. Be the eagle. And since she did that, the kid's been practicing every day. So again, another great tool for the toolbox. As I just alluded to, this stuff I'm talking about now, oh, I like that one. Harder I try, higher I fly. Now there's a good dad. This traces back to a lady named Dweck. And Carol Dweck wrote this really good book called Mindset. I recommend you read it. And she's famous for coming up with these two terms called fixed versus growth mindset. She recommends parents should be pretty careful about not calling their kids smart, which is very tempting to do when they're young. Oh, my kid can read so many words. Look how smart my kid is. Says what happens if the kids hear that over and over again, they develop what's called a fixed mindset. I'm a smart kid. I'm a smart kid. Then when they go to school and they make mistakes, they melt down. Wait, I'm smart. I should get that. Now, what she recommends is that use the S word very judiciously, but focus more on effort. Tell kids, try hard, and if you screw up, get up and try again. And that if you do that, they develop what's called a growth mindset. And those kids, when they screw up, they embrace it. They go, oh, wow, here's something I can learn. This is really, really a big part of parenting, having your kids develop that growth mindset and have them not get so upset about making mistakes, having them see mistakes as opportunities, about effort. And again, all of this stuff, we're talking about today reduces anxiety. So yeah, there are some specific strategies about reducing anxiety, but I think everything I'm giving you today reduces anxiety. And also, to add to what Dweck's saying, it is very critical not to use labels like rude, manipulative, resistant, lazy with your kids. There's a term we call stereotype myth. I thought Malcolm Gladwell came up with it, but I couldn't find that he actually said it. But it's an important term. What experts are saying is that if you use these negative adjectives with your kids, rude, manipulative, resistant, lazy, anything like that, they literally can take them on, they can become fixed, and they stop trying. They stop trying. If you need to use, and then you wonder why the kid's mad at you, why the kids, a lot of kids stop trying when they hear these labels. If you need to use one of these words, put the word choice in front of it. When you do this, you're choosing to manipulate me and mom. Maybe that's the way you're getting a little control. Maybe you need a little bit. When you do this and this, you're choosing to be rude. Maybe it's your way of giving back to us what you feel you. So you could put the word choose in front of it. Ms. Dweck writes, for 20 years, my research has shown the view you adopt yourself profoundly affects the way you lead your life. If you think you're a loser, if you think you're a lazy kid, if you think you're a rude kid, if you think you're a stupid kid, and a lot of our kids, they take on these labels, it, and sometimes it comes from us, sometimes it comes from others. They take them on, they stop trying. So let's be really, really careful about the words we use. That's also, and this gets back to what we talked about earlier today, these words we use, they often come from a good place. For instance, so what is our job as parents is to kind of decode these behaviors. Like, for instance, the word resistant. A lot of you sent in questions, and my kid's resistant, he won't try something. How you would reframe resistance is cautiousness. When you don't try things, you're being pretty cautious, and if you don't try something, you can't get it wrong, you can't get hurt, and you take it, maybe that's you taking good care of yourself. I've worked with a lot of troubled kids in the schools who refuse to do work, who are resistant. I tell the teacher, they're not resistant, they're cautious. They don't want to fail, they don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to look stupid. They've heard these terms over and over again. So I will say to a kid, I've said to thousands of kids over the years, you're pretty cautious. You're really good at protecting yourself. If you don't try anything, you don't attempt anything, you can never get hurt. And what's wrong with that? Given where you're coming from, you're good at taking care of yourself. But the problem is you're a really smart kid. And if you don't try some of this work, you're not going to be all you can be. So how about we do just a little, just give me one thing. So that's called reframing, just looking for attention. I hate that term. These kids just looking for attention. I said, probably kid could use it. A kid who's stubborn and defiant. Hey, you're good at standing up for yourself. That's a really good thing. Martin Luther King was very stubborn. Mother Teresa was very stubborn, and they changed the world. You can too. But the good ones knew how to connect with people. One of my favorite verbal interventions in the strength-based world is reframing. It's what we're doing here. You take a negative behavior and you find the protective value in it. You find the goodness in it and address that with the kid. I came back from a training trip, years ago. I was on the road for about 2 weeks. My daughter was about 12. And it was the longest trip I had ever taken. Longest time I'd been away from her. And was she giving me lip when I got back? So rude, so sassy. And my wife was saying to me, why are you taking that? Why are you letting her talk to you that way? I said, I think that's a way of saying I missed you. She's 12, pre-adolescent. She can't tell me she missed me. That's not cool. Oh, that's stupid. Don't give me that psychobabble crap. I'm not one of your kids. Wow, you miss me that much? Oh, that's so stupid. And she flings up the stairs, goes to her room. My wife looks at me and says, I can't believe you let her talk to you that way. I says, I don't know. I think I was right. I could have been wrong. I'll never forget, an hour later, I'm bending down to get an apple in the refrigerator, and I feel a hand on my shoulder. It was my daughter. I turn around, look at her, she says, "You were right, Dad. You were right, Dad." That was a nice intervention, you know. There's almost no behavior you can't reframe into a positive. There's one technique I want you to practice is look at reframing. They're in my handouts, they're right here, you know, so try it. So not resistant, they're cautious, you know. I tell teachers, the kid didn't have a tantrum, he had a big message. What was he trying to tell you? I tell kids who have learning disabilities, bipolar, OCD, Asperger's syndrome. I say, you don't have Asperger's, you got a roadblock. So every major city in America has roadblocks, yet people get to work on time every day. Why? And kid says, because they find a way around it. That's all. Some of the greatest people in the world have bipolar, have OCD, have ADHD, have some kind of neurological thing, have some different wiring, and they become successful because they find a way around it. I've literally seen kids' lives change almost overnight when you took a negative behavior and it turns it positive. It's amazing. It's amazing. And we also help kids with their winning and losing. I tell kids, if you lose, don't get the blues. And if you don't win, just grin. You know, I love these lines with kids, you know. You say the first line, you know, I might be walking through a school, I see a kid, hey, if you lose, don't get the blues. Or I get in front of a whole group of kids. And if you don't win, just grin. You say these over and over again, and they get into a kid's head, you know. And really, what are we trying to do in attacking the self-doubt with the stuff we talked about? Is change their thinking. Why are so many kids acting out? Why do you sometimes act out? It's because of your thoughts. I'm stupid, I can't do this, I'm a bad parent. You know, that's the thinking that gets in the way. Why are kids defiant? Why are they rude to you? Why are they doing the behaviors that you sent me questions asking? Often it's their thinking. So what we want to do is change that thinking. If it's stinking, change the thinking. If it's stinking, change the thinking. I think all of you should put this on your refrigerator. You know, the kid acts out. Hey, what were you, you know, once the kid calms down, what were you thinking before you did this? What were you thinking? You know, it's a wonderful way to talk to your kids. And by the way, you can see I like rhyming, you know, and actually there's a technique behind it. It's called cueing or one-line rapping. It's where you give a kid a line like the harder I try, the higher I fly, be the eagle. And it's amazing, you know? And why does this work? It's all neurological. Bruce Perry, the #1 trauma guy in the world, said the brain is designed to change response to pattern, repetitive stimulation. If you say something over and over again, it literally gets in your head. You can, in my packets, in my handout, I have tons of these. A lot of them I've already given you. Why do they work? What's 7 times 7? 49. Why do you know that? It's not interesting because someone drilled it in your head. You know, you'll be on your deathbed. You'll have no memory left. You'll be in some flea bag hospice. You'll hear a little grandkid out in the waiting room doing a homework. 7 times 7. Why and I? Why and I? You know, because you can't get out of your head. There's no such thing as a sevenectomy. It's there. So if you can't get that out of your head, why don't we give kids those lines? You know, kid has anger problems. Let it go, Joe. Let it go, Joe. You know, kid has ADD, step after step. That's the prep. You know, kid is giving the mother a hard time. Be nice to your mother. You got no other. You know, I mean, it's just, I could do a whole half hour on this. I did I'm going to pass on this. Yeah, I don't have time for this. But I was doing a weekly parenting segment on a big cable channel in Boston. I did a segment on this stuff. And the weatherman came up to me the next week and he thanked me. He says, Charlie, thank you, thank you. I go, what? And he says, I can't tell you the specifics, but as I was driving home after the show last week, I kept saying to myself, if you talk in an angry tone, you'll live alone. If you talk in an angry tone, you'll live alone. He said, I had the best week with my family I've had in 3 years. 15 years later, he's still patting me in the back. You know, it's really amazing. And maybe the most important reason you need to believe in your kids and be so positive, doing all the stuff I've been presenting so far, is that when you are positive, when you are inspirational, when you treat them with great respect, when you focus on what they do right, like I've been talking about, it leads to the 4-letter H word you can't live life without. And what's that word? Hope. Hope is humanity's fuel. You could have a Mercedes-Benz somewhere. It's going nowhere if it doesn't have fuel. I think every kid in your house is a Mercedes-Benz, but sometimes they're on empty. Sometimes they're losing fuel. Some of the kids who are acting out for you right now, they're empty. You got to give them fuel, and how do we do that? Many ways, just by all the techniques I'm giving you today, build them up as it gives them such respect, but also more specifically, it's really for them to have hope. You need to talk to them about their future. This is a really critical part of parenting and dealing with kids. James Garbarino, who I mentioned before, said that terminal thinking, the inability to articulate one's future, may be a clue to why some kids make it, some don't. Very, very important. I came up with a technique years ago. It's been wildly successful, called positive predicting. So I meet a kid for the first time, or as I'm talking to my kid, I will often ask them questions about the future, like, how are we going to celebrate when this ends and we get back to our normal life, like the pandemic? What's the first rest? Okay, so these might be questions you could ask your kids. How are we going to celebrate when this ends and we get back to our normal life? What's the first restaurant that we go to when this is over? What are you going to do when we grow up? What are you going to be when you grow up? Tell me the top 3 colleges that you'd like to attend. How should we celebrate when you do this, when you start doing your homework or this and that? When you get me 3 done, when you get me 3 questions sent in, how should we celebrate this? I think you're turning the corner. As I say here, when you talk about the future in truly positive terms, you make any desired outcome more possible. And when it's more possible, it becomes more probable. I could tell you stories that would make you cry about the use of positive predicting. So always talk about the future. And what it's doing neurologically is literally opening up the brain. Because what happens under stress, what happens when we're suffering a pandemic, the brain kind of constricts. It gets into that defensive mode, where you're kind of down here and you're just reacting. It's a natural biochemical reaction. So it has never been more important. The timing has never been more right to open up that brain by talking to your kids about their future, asking them questions, using this positive predicting and so forth. Now, in the remaining time, I'd like to get to what I was originally going to speak to for the whole time. That's managing the most important person in any interaction you have with the kids. Responding instead of reacting. Who is the most important person in any interaction you have with the kids? It's you. If you don't do well, the kids have no chance. The reality is we don't always do that well. Is there anybody out there right now that could tell me you've gone a whole day with your kids and not made a mistake with them? No one ever raises a hand. When you make a mistake, what are you doing? You're misusing a tool, a verbal intervention tool, a limit setting tool. What good is me giving you tools today, or you getting tools from another presenter, if you're going to misuse them? I won't even go somewhere and do a training unless they let me do this part of the training. Because I'm not going to give people tools if they don't give me time to help those people use those tools. So to cut to the punchline, I think there are 2 major reasons why you and I act out, why people act out towards kids every day. 1, we take it personally when they misbehave, and 2, lack of support causes us to become punitive. Let's start talking about taking it personal. I don't believe anybody who says I don't take it personal when my kids behave. We all do. We all do. And the big thing that occurs when you personalize a difficult interaction with your kids is your self-esteem takes a hit. Probably the most important thing I can tell you today, if you can't remember anything from this training, is this. No one in the world has good self-esteem. If any one of you raise your hand and says, Charlie, I got good self-esteem, that's a stupid comment. All I'd have to do is look at you if I could see you and say, hey, what happened to you? You looked so good last time I saw you. Oh my God, look at you. If I said that to any one of you, you'd be toast the rest of this webinar. Bottom line, self-esteem is fragile even when it's good. Even when it's good. And based on that dynamic, you pick one of the hardest tasks in the world, being a parent. Because when you're a typical parent, especially during stressful times, you suffer multiple hits to your self-esteem every day. The kids don't do their work, they're rude to you, they act out, they're disruptive. Anybody there want to disagree with me that this isn't happening every day? It's happening to me with my kid. We're here all the time. And oftentimes when kids act out, we take it personally. We take hits to our self-esteem, and then we tend to react instead of respond. We yell, we get mad, we get punitive. We want our pound of flesh. Okay, here's how to do better. To be a really great strength-based parent, you have to have what we call an observing ego. That's that little voice that talks to you, during the heat of battle. anytime you're going through a rough time with your kids and you're taking it personally, you got to have this kind of inner dialogue. Say, I'm really ticked. I'm pissed. I could kill this. Oh man, I'm really angry. It's okay. All feelings are okay. Learn from this. Behavior, Appelstein said, behavior is a message. Stay cool, stay cool, stay cool. And then you say the most important thing. And I'm suffering a really bad self-esteem injury. Key term is injury. If I have a cut on my arm, what's going to happen to it in a few days? It's going to heal. It's an injury. It will heal. Respond instead of react. I have millions of people all over the world saying that every day. It's an injury. It will heal. Respond instead of react. And respond really means use the golden rule. Don't say or do anything to your kids that you wouldn't want said or done to yourself. We have a horrible double standard in society that says we can say and do things to kids we would never tolerate. You like being yelled at? You like being bossed around without a please or a thank you? You like being punished? You like being the butt of sarcasm? Why would a kid? Use the golden rule. And there are three big skills that make up respond, react. First is the affect skill. What this says quite simply is the louder the kids get, the quieter you get. As they're getting louder, they're losing control. You need to be in it. Hey guys, can I please see you over here? No, screw it. He's doing it too. I need to see you. They get louder, you get quieter. They lose control, they need to see you in it. You can get mad now and then. Say a kid throws something at you, does something really provocative. Hey, I'm really angry about the choice you just made. I'd like you to take a break on the couch and then we'll talk. I don't care, I don't hate you. We'll talk a little while. Angry at the choice, never the kid. If you say to your kids, I'm really angry at you, I'm really disappointed, especially during times of stress, they'll probably hear that 10 times a day. And what does that do to their self-esteem, their sense of self? It brings it down. Even when you're angry, be angry in a controlled way at the choice. And if they leave the zone, then you get more muted. The next thing we talked about is content message. We kind of talked about that. Everything we say in the world has two components of content and message. That's why we want to say please and thank you. Could you please see me in the hallway? Could you please start your routine? Thanks. I like to say please and thanks. If you don't say please and thanks, it's going to cut out more hostile. Move your stuff over there. Start your homework. Do that. You also don't want to start any sentence with the word you if it's a request. You need to stop that. You need to cut that out. You need to look more interested in this webinar, you. That's a W, that's even worse. No, you want to start with I or we. I'm a little comfortable with what you're talking about. You think we can find a better way? If I knew every parent and teacher was saying please and thank you, I or we, using the affect skill, I wouldn't worry about kids so much. And be careful about your body. Don't come at your kids fast. Don't come at them high. You know, you got a kid who's disgruntled, sit next to the kid at a 45-degree angle. Lie on the floor next to the kid and then start open-ended. Anytime your kids are upset and stuff, you need to talk to them. Never start, why'd you throw the chair? Why are you having such a hard time? You want to do something which we call non-judgmental communication. What's going on? What's happening? What's this all about? And then let the kid spout for a little and then get the kid. In my packet, I have some wonderful verbal interventions that will help you connect with your kids. Because the number one thing you want to think about when you have an angry kid or a group of kids is engagement. Hook them in. They're going to say things they don't mean. That's called displacement. I hate you. The worst parent that, well, you seem pretty mad at me right now. I feel bad about that. What can I do? Even if what they're saying isn't true, just go with it. Your number one job when you have angry kids, especially during times of stress, is to hook them in. Hook them in. Responding also means that you use consequences instead of punishment. We talked about that earlier. Consequences are related to the behavior in question. Punishment isn't. Consequence reinforce values, which is why they're there. Why do we have consequences? Because without them, our values would not be maintained. If you don't have values in your home around safety, about respect, if you don't have consequences, then the message to the kids is, hey, you can hit people here. You can be disrespectful. It's no big deal. No, we have consequences to reinforce the values of respect and dignity. Consequences reinforce those values. We talked about this. Now, let me ask you a question. What is the most important thing a parent should be thinking about prior to setting a limit with a kid or group? In my new book, I think I make a strong case for the answer being the sanctity of the relationship. Behavior is going to come and go. But what's the most important thing you got going with your kids is that relationship. If you yell at them, if you're not using the language I talked about, if you're not doing the things I stressed today, you're hurting that relationship. And it's that relationship that's going to bring you together. So when you're thinking of setting limits with your kids, and we got to set limits with our kids, think about the sanctity of the relationship. Make sure you deliver it in the right way. Make sure it's a consequence. Make sure it's related. I think that's what's most important. That's what's going to get these kids doing better. Someone once said that rules without relationship equals rebellion. I like that. Now, again, I could spend an hour talking about limit setting, and a lot of this is in my handout. A lot of this is here. But here are some classic consequences. And again, I'm not a big behavior guy. I think if you do the stuff we've been talking about today, you reduce behavior dramatically. I've seen that everywhere I've ever worked. 2 months before my book came out, after rewriting it for 3 years, I put a note on LinkedIn. I said, after 3 years of revising my book, the new version is finally coming out in 2 months. Guy emailed back right away, director of a big residential program. He said, when we got your book 10 years ago, we were doing 300 physical restraints a year. After 6 months, we were down to 0, and I've not had a restraint in 10 years. It wasn't the chapter on limit setting that reduced the behavior. It was all the stuff I've been giving you today, all of that stuff. Best way to deal with problem behavior is to prevent it. The best way to prevent it is using these best strength-based approaches. But you do have to set limits with kids. And when you set limits, they should be related to what the kids. Some of my favorite consequences that we've been using for years, take a break. Could you chill out? I don't like the term timeout. I think it's stigmatizing. I like open-ended. Said a kid is really being disrespectful. Hey, could you take a break? You choose where you want to go. Let them choose. When kids are empowered to choose where they go, they're so much more likely to do it. Come back when you're ready. It could be different times of breaks. Raise your hand when you're ready. But I tell kids, if I'm at a meeting at a school and I'm getting mad, the principal might say, Charlie, take a break. That's all. Redoing. Kid says something fresh to you. Hey, can you try that again? I think you call me parent of the year. Not sure it came out that way. Proximity manipulation. If kids are acting out in the den, you're cooking dinner, they're not listening to you, so they have to be brought into the kitchen. So what's the logical behavior response for kids who are acting out? They got to be watched more closely. Grounding a kid. Grounding isn't a punishment. You're not grounded because to be in pain. You can watch TV. You can do stuff. You're grounded because you lost your trust. You came in past curfew. You were doing some drugs. You're doing stuff. We need to talk about that. You've lost your trust, so you need to be in the house, and we need to be working on this. When you earn back your trust, you can go out again. Reparation. It's like community service. My daughter became a teenager. I didn't use timeouts anymore. If she really overdid her sassiness, rudeness, whatever, I said, you've overdone it. You've taken away a lot of the good feelings we have in this house. You need to give something back. And so she had to do some jobs. Like I said, community service. She had to be nice, do some trash, help cook dinner, clean up afterwards. She had to do something to give something back. It really worked out well. So think of it like community service. Look at behaviors, taking away some of the good feelings you have in the house. So give something back. Directed chat. Kids acting out in the den with some other kids. Pull them to a neutral location, far away, and just talk to the kid. That's all. Restriction. A kid is getting onto the wrong website, so they lose that for a while. Again, these are all related to what the kids do. If you ask my daughter, what kind of limit setter was your father? Give him a grade. She'd probably say C, C+. I was okay with setting limits, but she ended up doing really well in life because I think we did the other stuff pretty good. I think behavior management's a little overrated, to be honest with you, And the other huge reason we screw up so much with kids, maybe the number one reason, is lack of support. Someone once said that anybody who parents kids or works with kids who doesn't receive enough support, meaning breaks, training, praise, encouragement, feedback, is at great risk to be punitive with the kids. I don't think there's anyone out there that gets the right amount of support right now, which means you're at great risk to be punitive with your kids every day. And sometimes you are. So what are some strategies? Near the end of a day or any time you're really stressed out and you feel like reacting instead of responding to your kids, and you feel like acting out, reacting instead of because of lack of support, here are 5 things to think about. 1, think about the principle. Lack of support equals punitive actions. And don't go there. Think, I'm stressed. I haven't had any breaks. I feel like yelling at the kids. Appelstein said lack of support caused me to stop it. I can do anything for 2 more hours. I can do anything. I can't tell you how many people, parents and professionals, email me, say, that's my number one technique. When I'm feeling really stressed, I think, okay, lack of support is causing me to be punitive. Stop it. I can do anything for 10 more minutes. I can do anything for 3 more hours. 2, visualize going to bed feeling happy, feeling content. When I'm working with kids, when I'm with my daughter, I'm often thinking about the end of the day. Because we always play our day in my head. Am I going to feel good about how I dealt with her? Am I going to feel good about how I dealt with these kids at the end of the day? Am I going to feel bad because I yelled too much? Because I didn't do the techniques the way I did. So I'm always thinking about that. 3, think about tomorrow, next week. Parenting is always about the future. The better you do today, the better these kids are going to be. In fact, I always tell people parenting is about one word, probability. The better we do, the better they're going to do. So you can yell, you can punish, you could do things today that will get your kids to do exactly what you want them to do, but you're going to pay for it in the future. What did Gordon say? Why do teenagers act out sometimes? Payback for the power that was misused against them. So even though I might be stressed to the hilt, suffering terrible self-esteem injuries, I'm worn out, I'm always thinking, but if I yell at my kid today, I'm going to pay for it later. I'm going to pay for it next year. And if I yell too much, so I always think about the future. 4, think about a MASH unit. Hawkeye and BJ are operating 20 straight hours. They're heading to the tent. A wounded guy comes in. They don't say, sorry, man, we're tight. No, they save that person. No matter how tired you are, you try to do the best you can. And you can screw up. You can screw up. Just apologize. Kids need to see we're human. But this is what we're shooting for. And then the last thing is the force. You know, when you parent in an environment where you don't get enough support, and that's all of you, it's like Darth Vader is sucking you to the dark side. Don't listen to Appelstein. You were raised in a good way with punishment and stuff. You can yell at that kid, you know? And so what are you going to do? You know, it's like Darth Vader exists in every environment where parents and professionals get enough support. So what are you going to do the second you want to react to your kids? Because you're worn out and stuff and go to the dark side, you have to hear that Luke Skywalker, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi. No, Luke, use the force. Stretch out your feeling. No, you can, Luke! You know, Darth Vader is in every house sucking you to the dark side. Don't yell, don't listen to Appelstein. He's full of crap. You know, kids, you've been doing it this way your whole life. No, Luke, use the force, Luke. Stretch out. And I tell you, that gets me through life. Every time I want to yell, Luke, use the force, Luke. This stuff really works. Now, in the last 5-10 minutes, and I wish I really had more time for this because this is what I was going to spend 45 minutes with you today, but I wanted to add that other stuff based on your questions. Well, when it comes to support, there's definitely something you can do about that. Definitely things you can do about this. This is what we call an echo map. This is probably the, you know, I hope that you don't see it. This is the tool that's made my life so much better than so many others. You can use this for the rest of your life, and you should be using this right now when you get this from me. You put yourself in the middle, and all these bubbles are your support networks. And you can rate them from +3 to -3. 3, this is bringing me a lot of support. -3, this is seriously draining me. And every number, and then you can add them up. You can add the positive, the negatives, and see which is higher. If your negatives are -15 and your positives are +10, you're a -5. Because again, 3, I'm doing really well. I'm getting a lot of support in this area. -3, I'm seriously drained. Let's say you come to a +7. Your job is to get to a 12. Every number you can raise on your echo map increases the odds that you'll be a better parent. You know, lack of support causes people to be punitive. So for instance, household responsibilities and routines. Say you're in a traditional family and you're the mother and you're doing all the household cleaning and your husband's not helping you. Kick him in the butt, get him to help you. Make sure you have the kids involved in routines, you know, recreation and exercising, you know, get the kids outdoors. So much has been written about the value of being outdoors. Get kids moving. You know, in fact, I think I put it here. I've been seeing this on, oh, someone said, I've been seeing these 4 words on TV and hearing them on the radio at the bottom of your slide here. It said, you want to make it through this tough period? Think about the 4 M's: move, mindfulness, mastery, and meaningful connections. That's a lot of what this echo map's about. You want to be happier, you want to treat your kids in a better way, raise numbers. So I said, okay, make sure people are helping you with your household responsibilities. Recreation, get kids doing stuff. Make sure you're doing stuff. Find things that kids are good at. Find hobbies, sports. In my packet, I list lots of stuff that kids can do. You know, it's been written that when a kid is successful in one thing, has one thing he or she feels good about, it generalized to all of us. The same with you. This is a really wonderful time to find hobbies, sports, and stuff like that. In the strength-based world, we focus on doing versus understanding. Meaning that when kids have things that they're good at, hobbies, sports, music, art. It generates all this. So that's why, again, where I started today, if you've got a kid who's defiant and rude and not doing stuff, does he or she have things that make them feel good? And are you trumpeting those successes? Success, so that's a recreation bubble. And for yourself, are you doing things? Are you getting outside? You have art, music, and what are you doing to take care of number one? That is so critical that you have something to look forward to. Self-help, I could do 45 minutes just on this. Now, these are all on the internet, but clearly, what do you need to do to feel less anxious and manage yourself? I've given you a lot of strategies today, but I want you to go on the internet and learn about how to meditate, learning breathing exercises. There's a lot of online support, body checks. What do the experts tell kids to do when they're feeling anxious? Check your body, check your body. If you're fidgeting, you're getting tense, then give them coping strategies. Taking a walk, drawing, breathing, all that stuff. Learn some great breathing exercises. Mindfulness, that's a wonderful thing. It helps you to be in the moment and kind of get rid of a lot of the baggage you bring. You will help yourself immeasurably if you learn and practice mindfulness. Wonderful stuff that you can visit online. On the left-hand side here, family, relatives, you should be connecting out more now on Facebook, on chats and Zoom meetings to your family. This is a wonderful time to get back in touch with people. Again, what does it say down the bottom? Meaningful social connections reduce anxiety and get us through. Helping your neighbors, reaching out. Again, I love this echo map. It's really a way for you to assess what are you doing to feel better, to reduce anxiety, to help your kids. Every single number you can raise on your echo map increases the odds that you're doing better and your kids are doing better. Now, as I finish here, as I'm running out of time, and again, there's a ton of material in my handout, ton of material on this on these slides today that will help you to be the best you could be during these difficult times. Now, let me just say one last thing before we break here. You might say, Charlie, I'm not sure you're so motivational. You basically said my self-esteem sucks, and it's going to be hurt every day at home. I'm never getting enough support. You're not really making me feel too encouraging here and upbeat. Okay, well, let me finish with something that will make you feel more upbeat. All right, here we go. This picture of the house, the bottom right here, and I'm just telling my friend Emma at headquarters, I'm just going to go 2 more minutes and we'll finish up, as I know there are some questions. But I'll do the best I can to answer. This picture of the house is a symbol that's kept me in the business for the last 42 years and made me a much better parent than I ever would have been, ever. What does a picture of a house have to do with feeling great? About parenting, everything. What is our job as a parent? In a nutshell, it's to help put in a foundation for your kids. So when they leave your house at whatever age, they have a great foundation, a great what we call sense of self, so they can build a great life for themselves. Well, I believe and will to the day I die, that every single time you and I respond instead of react to our kids, you put a brick in. You greet them with a smile when you don't feel like it, brick. You say goodnight to them in a really warm way when you don't feel like it because you're so tired, brick. You say please and thank you, brick. You lose a game on purpose to a kid because he's kind of down, brick. You come up with a nice incentive program to help a kid who's stuck, brick. You reframe a difficult behavior. A kid who's stubborn, hey, you're good at standing up for yourself, brick. You apologize for something you did recently or in the past. That's 2 bricks. I believe and will to the day time that every time you keep your cool when a kid is tantering, brick. Every time you respond instead of react, you do it right, you put a brick in. And that your job is simple, you're a bricklayer. You're a bricklayer. I couldn't tell you this before because I hadn't introduced the metaphor. But at the end of every day, when I play my day over in my head, the way a lot of us do, I never ever judge my success as a parent based on the behavior of my kid. Sure, I want her to behave, I feel good when she does, but that's not what I ask. I ask myself one question every night when I go to bed. Did I behave well? Did it make my kid feel like $1 million? But did I have her do chores and stuff? Making a kid like doesn't mean that they don't do stuff. But did I practice the strength-based stuff the way I teach it? If I screwed up, did I apologize? Because we all screw up. The answer is yes. I know I put a lot of bricks in. I know I changed I help my daughter be a little bit better, increase the probability. You know, I get calls from kids I worked with 30 years ago, terribly abused kids who are now making it in life. They have families, they're doing well. They call me, they thank me profusely for me and my staff did. And I remember the kid, real tough, traumatized acting out kid who we loved, we nurtured, and used the strategies we talked about today with him. Every time I get one of those calls thanking me, it's great. I tear up, I hang up the phone, I look at my wife and I say, I guess we put a few more bricks in than I thought. And then I think, why would anybody in the world do anything else but this? Every time, every night you can go to bed saying, I did it pretty good today, you put some bricks. That's what great parenting's all about. Well, I hope I made sense today. You know, it's hard doing these things, not seeing you there. I hope I was somewhat lucid. Remember, the stuff I gave you today, it's not about good versus bad. It's about good, loving parents being even better. Stinking thinking if you think you screwed your kid up because you didn't do much. That's stinking thinking. No, you're a great parent if you love your kids. This is maybe stuff to help you do a little better. It's been a real honor being here today. I'll stick around. We'll do some questions. I think I'm going to stop the sharing now and join my buddies. All right.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. That was such
Did
a
you
good...
hear me? Did it make any sense out there, Emma?
We can, yeah, we all heard, and it was great, a really great presentation, a lot of helpful information. So we do have some questions, so I think I'll just get into those. I did want to say, because we had a lot of these questions, this video is being recorded, and we do plan to put it on our website at caddiscenter.org, and we'll send an email once we have that posted, so you know exactly where that'll be. And let me get into the first question. Let's see. We have, what do you do with kids who charge against structure of any kind, are triggered by family meetings, etc.?
Well, again, every kid is a great kid and every kid is wired differently. One of the things about being a parent is being personality correct. So when I hear about a kid who's kind of inflexible like that, you know, my big question is, where's it coming from? Is it neurological? Is it psychological? Sometimes kids are pretty rigid and they avoid these kind of social situations. So again, this is why I started the training this way. I'd have to know where this is coming from. So on one hand, we could have a kid on Asperger's syndrome who's very rigid, who doesn't like these kind of social meetings. So if that were the case, then when you have kids who are neurologically wired to have trouble socially, you want to create what we call a user-friendly environment. You don't pressure them to go to meetings. You don't make a big deal of this kind of stuff. If on the other hand, you feel this kid, he's wired perfectly and he just doesn't like this stuff, I would, you know, talk to, you know, again, one of the behavior management terms I like a lot is pattern identification. So any, you know, really ever does behavior happen once? It usually happens on a regular basis. It's repeated. So if I have a kid like that who won't attend meetings, do stuff, I want to try and figure out where's this coming from? What's going on? So not when it's happening, never when it's happening. So I might, at a different time of the day, take the kid aside, maybe play a game with the kid, loosen the kid up a little bit, and, you know, say, you know, what's with the meeting stuff? You know, some kids don't like meetings and stuff like that. And kind of gently explore what's going on. You know, because sometimes we interpret behavior. I make this mistake myself 2 times. We think we know why a kid's doing stuff. You know, I had a kid I was working with as an intern, as a therapist. He would never leave the building with me, wouldn't go for an ice cream and stuff. I thought it was because he was getting too close to me and he had loss issues. The reason he wouldn't come with me was because I was wearing a tie and he felt he wasn't looking good enough. So I dropped the tie, we went out. So, but I want to gently explore with these kids. Where's this coming from? And then see if you can negotiate with them a little. You know, there's a great book out there called The Explosive Child by Ross Greene. You should get it. What he says is when you have inflexible kids, well, kids, no, I don't like to say kids who act inflexibly, because I don't put like labels in kids. When you have kids who act inflexibly for neurological and just the way they are, he has this really nice approach. He talks about baskets. He says, when you have kids like that, put your expectations of them into one of 3 baskets. A, they do it or else. B, there's something to negotiate. C, you can negotiate with a kid. C, let it go. So with a kid like that, based on their wiring, based on this, I might say, you know, maybe could we start in the C basket? Just let it go. He doesn't have to come. You know, take the pressure. Don't yell at him. Say, hey, you're not comfortable doing that's fine. then try to talk with the kid, try to build a relationship, and then see if you get it into the B basket, where maybe you can negotiate with the kid. Hey, how about this? How about you come to one family meeting this week, just one? And that's it. I'm not going to even let you come to more. And we really had a lot of success with inflexible kids who using this kind of approach. But oftentimes you start with the C basket. Just let it go. Don't get mad. That woman with the daughter who wasn't cleaning up and stuff, what Glasser told her to do is literally put everything in the C basket. Let everything go. Just let her be a mess and stuff. Work on the relationship. And that's what I might recommend to the kids you just mentioned. So that's what I'd say there.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let me look at the next question here. Let's see. If you have any strategies for successful co-parenting in separate households, especially like under the current shelter in place and stressful circumstances.
A great question. Again, let's talk about pattern identification, predictable things that occur. When you have parents in different locations, it's clear that they're going to do different things. They're going to have different strategies. They're going to have different ways of relating. Kids need to hear that as opposed to just reacting to it. They need to hear, you have two loving parents. Both of us couldn't love you more, but each one have different styles, different approaches. It doesn't mean one is better than the others. I respect your mom, I respect your dad, and stuff like that. Because it kind of takes the elephant in the room and deals with it. So one, be direct with your kids. Be honest about it. The fact that you will have different styles. That's not one versus the other. I support what they do. They support what I do. But it's also helpful to communicate and try to be on the same page around the big stuff, if you can. Certainly I'm a strength-based guy. I think parents, co-parents should try to come together around a lot of the stuff we talked about today, like trying to have routines and predictability, especially now. Trying to use consequences instead of punishment, stuff like that. And also when this co-parenting, it is absolutely critical, never, ever say anything negative about the other person, because then you split the kid. That's what we call splitting. It's a horrible thing. If a kid ever came back and said, Dad said you're a jerk, you shouldn't do this. Your dad's a great guy. I think he's going through a rough time right now. We all are. He loves you. I love you. We care about each other. Even though you might not mean that, that is so important for that kid to hear. If a kid hears from a parent, well, your dad's not right. Well, your dad's wrong about that, then you split the kid. He has divided loyalty, and it really keeps family stuck, keeps kids stuck. That's how I'd say that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Let's see, our next one. They're wondering if you can recommend any parent resources for Spanish-speaking families.
Oh, I wish I could. I don't have enough, and I feel bad about that because I should. I really should. Be bad. But again, you go online, you look for the writers and so forth. My big thing would be try to find people who are advocating the same thing I'm advocating, using a positive strength-based approach. Because whether it's Spanish or any language, this is the way we should be helping kids. At some point in my career, I really want to translate my book into Spanish. I really should. I feel bad. I wish I could help more.
Okay, thank you. And let's see, our next one is, what is the best way to handle a 9-year-old boy who is recently diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, requiring needle sticks, lots of anger, kicks and hits doors and walls? So how do you redirect that anger to other behaviors?
Well, getting to what I talked about a few minutes ago, with a kid like that, I would really look under every rock for a hobby, sport, something he's really good at. And that's what you focus at. I play a lot of games with that kid. 9-year-old kid, lose on purpose. When I work with kids who are kind of off track, and I love the train metaphor, I say all kids are like trains, big powerful trains, but we all get off track. I would have loved to talk about that. I didn't have enough time. When I have kids like that, they need their spirits boosted. They got a lot of pressure with the needles and stuff. So like I play a lot of games with kids, like Uno, stuff like that. I lose on purpose all the time. Kids don't know it. Then they get really mad. Don't you tell dad you beat me. Don't you tell mom you beat me. That makes them feel good. Put some chemicals in their brain. I tell people who work with kids who are kind of struggling with their behavior, from the moment they wake up in the morning to the moment they go to bed, they should have multiple opportunities for success. Create things that they can be, modify things. and then really talk about that. You see that kid, hey, the first thing you say to the kid, I love the drawing you did yesterday, man. You know, there's a great book out there called Helping Traumatized Kids Learn. I'm not talking these kids are traumatized, but they say something in there. They say, when a kid is going through a rough time, has one thing they're really good at, it generalized to all other areas. So for a kid like that, and I've worked with kids like that, trying to find hobbies, sports, we create things for them to be successful, and that's what you talk about. Robert Brooks, if you Google this guy, Robert Brooks, he wrote the foreword to my book. He was actually working with a very depressed kid who had to take shots, 2 or 3 a day, years ago. And the mother brought the kid in for therapy because she was so depressed and angry. And make a long story short, he said to her during the first session, well, what are you good at? Is there anything you're really good at? And she looks back, she says, no, Dr. Brooks, I'm not good at anything. I'm not good at anything, Dr. Brooks. And she put her head down. Brooks said he felt like crying. A few minutes later, he's talking to the mother while the girl is sitting there. She looks up, she has a smile on her face. She says, Dr. Brooks, I know something I'm good at. I know something I'm good at. He says, what, dear? He says, I'm really good at taking shots. He says, well, are you? Make a long story short, he had the girl write a booklet on how to take shots, and they put it in the middle school. All the kids read it, and it really boosted her self-esteem. So that's one avenue you could take. You might even come up with some one-line raps, you know. I'm trying to think of something, you know. I'm going to take that shot because that's all you got. You know, I love these raps. You don't do it when it's happening. But I could tell you stories that make you cry. You going to give me that shot? That's all you got? You know, 9-year-old kids like this kind of stuff. You know, so maybe right before the kids takes a shot, you come up with some joking like that. You're going to give me a shot? That's all you got? You know, put it in. I ain't then. You know, so like sometimes these raps can be really helpful. So there's a few little strategies I would talk about.
Perfect.
Other things?
Yeah, we have a couple more. We had a couple asking, what are good examples for consequences?
Okay, it depends on the age, but these are all in my packet. Really get my handout, get this PowerPoint, and the handout spelled out even more, but you know, the consequences are related to what the kid did. So, you know, for younger kids who are rude, disrespectful, unruly, or, I like take a break. You know, could you please take a break? You kind of cross the line. You go where you want to go. Chill out. Come back when you're ready and we'll talk. And then process. What could you have done differently? What's going on? You know, in my packet, we talk about how to process and stuff like that. So taking a break, proximity manipulation. So if a kid's acting out, what's the logical consequence? They have to be watched more closely. So a kid who's acting out in the living room while you're trying to cook, you've warned him a few times, now he has to come in the kitchen. You know, redoing kids something fresh to you. Hey, can you try and say that again? I think you called me parent of the year. Not sure it came out that way. You know, I like reparation for older kids, even younger kids. Kids are really acting out. You can say, you know, you took away a lot of the good feelings we have in this house by how you chose to act. I think you could do a lot better. I'd like you to give something back, and then pick a chore that they have to do. That actually builds their self-esteem. So it's a way of giving back. I had a lot of success with this with my daughter and some other kids. Empower them to come up with the chores. And you can say no TV, nothing until you take care of this, until you give something back. Directed chat, kid is acting out, pull the kid into another room away from the other kids and just, what's going on? What's happening? You walk away. Kid is being disrespectful. You know, I think I'm going to leave right now. It's kind of like you take the time out, stuff like that. Grounding a kid, you can ground a kid to the house. You know, you're not grounded to be in pain. You know, it's not a punishment. You're grounded because you lost your trust. What you were doing outside was really unsafe. So you need to be back in the house to earn back that trust. And we need to come up with skills and talk about what's going on. Yeah. So these are the consequences we've been using for millions of years. I've used these in detention centers. I use these in homes. They're all related to what they did. They reinforce the values of your setting. And if they refuse to do them, there should be what we call a limit setting progression. Well, if you can't take the break, you know, then I'm not sure we're doing anything later. You know, I'm not sure you can watch TV until we take care of this. You know, we can't move forward until we can't say hello until we say goodbye. We got to take care of this. but avoid real power struggles. You know, so that's how these are kind of the logical consequences that I write about that are in the packet that are all related to what the kid did.
Great, thank you. And just a reminder to everyone, we will be providing a link where his PowerPoint slides and these handouts will be emailed to you. So I think we'll just do a couple more questions since we're a little bit over time. So let's see. I'll read this next one. It's a bit long, so I'll read it out and then let me know if you need me to repeat anything. So I have a few clients that have been acting out since COVID-19. One of my clients doesn't talk to her mother, and her mother struggles to get her child to talk to her. Another client that's being bullied at school and mentioned he doesn't have a male figure he can talk to, so he acts out there because his father isn't present, and a few other clients like that. So what are some strategies and techniques or tools that you suggest to discuss this with her clients in order for them to achieve their treatment goals?
Well, in the first one, this gets back to what we talked about before. I have a technique I call seeing is believing. You know, what do all schools and homes use? It's called standard behavior management, which basically says if kids behave, we treat you good. If you don't, we're going to set limits. We're going to be tough on you. So that's what I call believing is seeing. We believe in you when we see you doing well. In situations like the first one you mentioned, I like seeing is believing, which says, if I see you, I believe in you. You don't have to behave well for me to treat you great. So if you have a kid who's not talking to their mother, this exactly kind of the scenario I talked about earlier in the webinar. That parent should try and do anything and everything she can to reach that kid. Do something fun with the kid. Cook the kid's favorite meal. Apologize. You know, one of the greatest ways to connect with the kid is to say, look, you and I haven't been getting along, you know, lately, and I feel bad about it. And I think a lot of that is me. One of the greatest ways to restore a relationship is for the parent, for the adult to take responsibility. I've had kids say to me, no parents ever apologize to me. So even if that parent has been a pretty good parent, find something she did wrong. Find something that may have contributed to the kid not talking. You know, or, you know, talk developmentally, you know, I know you're going through a rough time. We got the COVID virus stuff. You got adolescents. This is hard. And I'm not always the easiest parent. How about we do something fun? You know, maybe, again, little changes. How about give me 10 minutes. You and I cook a meal. You and I take a walk. Little changes ripple into dramatic solutions. So again, the issue there isn't the not talking, it's the relationship. So I don't know a lot about that, but if I was working with the parent and that kid who's not talking to her mother, I'm looking at where's this coming from? What responsibility for the parent? What kind of positive things can they do? You know, and the parent should resist getting into any kind of put downs on the kid or anything like that, you know, and this and that. The kid is not talking, she's sending a message. We talked about this earlier. What is the message she's sending? What's going on there? Does it have something to do with that parent? Something to do with her sexuality? Something to do with something she's afraid of? So the parent gently wants to get at that, but I would really suggest that parent do something fun with the kid. You know, not because she earned it, because that's what she needs. That's that unconditional support that kids need at any age. The second one, the kids being bullied. You know, kids need role models. They need people in life. Sometimes a kid needs a male in their life. If there's no one at the school that could do that, again, with Zooming and stuff like that, is there an uncle? Is there a cousin? Is there another teacher at the school that can reach out to the kid? You know, everywhere I work, I try to start mentoring programs. So I try to find an adult who can mentor a kid. So again, you know, I'd have to know more about that situation, but I deal with situations like that. And so kids are desperate for relationships. You know, so I would look under every rock at that school. Is there another teacher? Is there a counselor? Is there someone that can meet with that kid just 15 minutes a week? That was my role in the schools for 20 years. I would deal with these really acting out kids who were coming from broken homes, and I would be that one adult, or I would find other adults to be that unconditional support person. So can you find a volunteer? Can you find another relative on Zoom? Can you get an uncle to write to that kid? Kids desperately need these relationships, so you look under every rock to see if you can find them. You know, could the teacher spend a little extra time? Could an older kid in the school meet with the kid? I do that often. I got a fourth grader. I might have a middle school come and see the kid, you know, for 15, 20 minutes a week with supervision. One adult, one relationship like that can literally change a kid's life. So I love the challenge of finding relationships with these kids, positive, unconditional relationships with these kids. They desperately need it. That'd be a response there.
Thank you. So I think quite a bit of people are kind of getting off because I think it's gone a little past the time. So I think I'm just going to do one more that I think is relevant to the current situation. And then maybe if people have other questions, we could provide your email, or I could provide our email to send them to you.
Okay.
So let's see, the last question we'll do is, how would you explain the current situation to kids? I mean, they put specifically a 3-year-old, but maybe if you want to do like around
Is it a
that
3-year-old?
They put specifically a 3-year-old.
Okay, so here's the real key. When something's going on, like a pandemic, like anything that is really changing routines and things, kids sense something's going on. And so you gotta, and it's hard for a 3-year-old, and really, you're not gonna say much. But for a 3-year-old, you really wanna say that, that's a good question for a 3-year-old. Let me think about this. I think a 3-year-old could probably relate to the fact that people get sick now and then. And sometimes they get sick and it can be a little bit serious. And right now we have people in America who are getting sick and it's a little bit more serious. So we have to be really careful and watch them closely. You know, if you get sick, I put you in bed, I watch you closely. If you have a high temperature, I give you a lot of water and I watch you even more closely. So right now we just have a thing going on where, you know, some people are getting sick a little too much. And so we're going to find out a way to help them all. And you're safe. You're going to be okay. I think I would use that kind of language because that's the kind of language I think a 3-year-old can hear. Bottom line, kids need to hear, not all age kids need to hear what's going on, but they shouldn't be watching TV all the time with CNBC on or something like that. You want to kind of just be really matter of fact about it and give them hope that we've had this stuff happen in the past. There'll be things like that. We'll get back to normal, but right now we got to kind of play it safe while the doctors and the scientists do their thing. But you want to be pretty upfront about them, because if you're not talking to them about that, they may be thinking what's really going on here. So kids can misinterpret things and stuff like that. Okay. Still there?
Great. Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. I actually, if I could do one more.
Why not?
This person really wanted the answer. So let's see. We have, so this person was a single parent of 5 and the dad isn't involved.
Single parent of 5?
A parent, yeah, single parent of 5, the dad isn't involved. And
a 5-year-old or 5 kids?
What was that?
Was it 5 kids or a 5-year-old?
5 kids.
5 kids. God bless you.
And she's feeling alone, and there isn't much harmony between the kids. They all seem to be in fight or flight mode. So she's just curious how you would bring the harmony back. Their ages 3, 9, 11, 12, and 14.
That's a great question. You know, again, you're alone, and that's a lot of stress on you. So if you can get on Zoom and you could do some family meetings, friend meetings, get the kids to Zoom with their friends, because really what you want to do is really look at that echo map that I showed earlier and really look, how can you build connections, you know? And then I would also look at that echo map, look for activities you could do with the kids, you know, maybe, you know, and again, because of their age difference, this is what we talked about before, you might want to schedule more than you're doing now. Maybe you schedule a movie night with your older kids together. You know, I would really, you know, try to put more structure in your house. Fun things you could do with the kids at certain times. Have a family meeting and say, guys, this is really hard. It's not easy to get along. Well, let's see if we can come up with some fun stuff. Maybe get a schedule. And on this night, you have pizza night. You know, on this day, at this time, these kids see a movie. These kids do that. So the kids know that there's a predictable time they're going to be with you. And that can help a tremendous amount, that kids know that, you know, maybe on Saturday I get an hour with my mother. You know, on the afternoon, we're going to do drawing together. At 8 o'clock, these 3 kids are going to see a movie together. You know, see if you can schedule stuff that they can, certain parts of them can do. You know, empower them around meals and stuff like that. And then really look to see who else can help you, can come into the equation. If you have the luxury of having, a computer where you could do Zoom stuff, at the very least have people calling. If say you didn't have Zoom and you couldn't do face-to-face meetings, get people calling, grandmother, uncle, this, that. Try to look at this as it's not you and your 5 kids, it's you and your constellation of contacts, a boss, a friend. See if they can call the kids from time to time. Make sure the kids are hearing from their friends and things like that. But again, and have, if you can, have family meetings. Say to them what you said to me, guys, we're a family, we love each other. This is really tough times, but it's going to be more fun and we're going to be more happy if we get along together. So how about we make a few plans and then talk about structuring, talk about activities, talk about ways you could make it better. Who could we call? Who could we hear from that we, what kind of things we could do? And get creative. Look at activities you could do as a family. Doing things. What did I say earlier? In the strength-based world, we focus on doing versus understanding. Rather than therapizing with all these kids and talking to them about their feelings, see if you can structure more fun activities, age-appropriate stuff. Put it on a board, put schedules, in my packet that I'm going to send you, there's a lot of fun stuff. For instance, where am I, get a dice, have a dice bowl champion. Here's dice. I have parents and professionals all over the world, they won't get up without dice in their pocket. You can have a fun contest with your kids. You say to them, how many times can you roll the dice without getting doubles? So say a kid rolls, and he rolls 4 in a row and then he gets doubles. Then he starts over again. You could have a family champion. You could put them into teams. How many times can you roll the dice without getting doubles? And so you can have like these family, contests and stuff like that. I can't tell you how many times this has been successful. So you have a family challenge. How many times can you roll the dice without getting doubles? You get doubles, you start over again. So you do it for like 5 or 10 minutes, and the kids keep track. How many times in a row did they roll without getting doubles? So it's kind of a fun thing you can talk about. You can do the longest domino chain. How many cards? So you can do like kind of contests, that kind of bind the family together. You could do a big puzzle where they all try and help. So again, I really think one of your salvations can be finding more activities, putting them on the wall, having more fun. And as I said earlier, when kids have more fun, it releases more chemicals in the brain. And again, get more people involved, whether through phone, through Zoom video. Don't do this alone. That would be our response.
Perfect. Thank you so much for answering that last question. And
My pleasure.
for the presentation today, that was great. And I just want to do a final reminder. We will be sending out an email with the link to access the slides and the handouts and the recording of the video. So thank you everyone for being on today. Thank you, Charlie, for giving the presentation.
My pleasure. I love you guys. Be all you can be with these kids.
And everyone have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Bye-bye.